Confirmation bias. Your brain likes to be right, so when you already believe something, it goes looking for proof that you're correct, and quietly skips over anything that says otherwise. Imagine you think a certain football team is the best. You'll notice every game they win and forget the ones they lose. It happens with bigger things too, like politics, health choices, and relationships. The belief comes first, and the brain builds a case around it. Anchoring bias. The first number you hear sticks in your head, and everything after gets compared to it. Say you walk into a shop and see a jacket priced at 5,000 taka, crossed out, now selling for 2,000. Suddenly, 2,000 feels like a steal even if the jacket was never worth 5,000 to begin with. Car dealers, landlords, and online stores all use this trick. The starting number sets the mood for everything that follows. The Dunning-Kruger effect. The less someone knows about something, the more confident they tend to feel about it. A person who just started learning about nutrition suddenly feels qualified to advise everyone around them. Meanwhile, an actual doctor stays cautious because they know how complex the body really is. It's not stupidity. It's just that beginners don't yet know how much they don't know. As real knowledge grows, overconfidence usually shrinks. Availability heuristic. If something comes to mind easily, the brain assumes it must happen a lot. When a plane crash is all over the news, people suddenly feel terrified of flying, even though driving to the airport is statistically far more dangerous. The news story was dramatic and vivid, so it feels significant. Everyday risks that don't make headlines get ignored. The brain mistakes memorable for common, and that changes how people make decisions. The bandwagon effect. When lots of people seem to believe or do something, others follow along without thinking it through. If everyone at work is saying a certain app is amazing, you start believing it before even trying it. Long queues outside restaurants make people curious. Viral opinions feel credible simply because so many are sharing them. It's not always wrong to follow others, but this bias means people often do it without realizing that's what's happening. Survivorship bias. We only see the people who succeeded, so we think success is more common and more achievable than it really is. You read about a young person who dropped out of university and built a company worth billions. What you don't read about are the thousands of others who did the same thing and are now struggling. The winners are loud and visible. The people who failed quietly disappeared. Looking only at the winners gives a very incomplete picture of reality. The halo effect. When someone makes one good impression, the brain tends to assume everything about them must be good. A person who is well-dressed and speaks confidently gets assumed to be intelligent, honest, and capable, sometimes before they've said anything meaningful. This happens in job interviews, classrooms, and courts. One positive quality casts a glow over the whole person, making it easy to overlook real problems hiding underneath. Attribution bias. When other people do something wrong, we blame their character. When we do the same thing, we blame the situation. A colleague arrives late and you think they're lazy or disorganized. When you arrive late, it's because traffic was terrible. This double standard shows up constantly in workplaces and families. People judge themselves by their intentions and judge others by their actions, and that gap creates a lot of unnecessary friction. The sunk cost fallacy. The more you've already put into something, the harder it is to walk away, even when it's clearly not working. You're 2 hours into a terrible movie, but you sit through the whole thing because you already paid for the ticket. Or someone stays in a bad job for years because they've already given so much time to it. The smart move is to only think about what comes next, but emotionally, past effort feels like something that can still be saved. Status quo bias. People prefer things the way they already are, even when change would clearly be better. Given a form with default settings already ticked, most people leave them as they are. Offered a better mobile plan, many people never switch because switching feels like effort. The familiar feels safe, and anything different feels like a risk, even when it isn't. Companies and governments design systems around this, knowing most people won't change what's already in front of them. In-group bias. People naturally favor others who belong to their own group, whatever that group happens to be. Same city, same school, same religion. It doesn't take much to create a sense of us and them. A hiring manager might unconsciously rate a candidate higher simply because they support the same football club. The bias often isn't conscious or mean-spirited. It's just that familiarity feels safe, and the brain rewards it quietly. The framing effect. The same fact can feel completely different depending on how it's described. Telling someone a surgery has a 90% success rate sounds reassuring. Telling them it has a 10% chance of failure sounds scary. Both sentences say the same thing. Advertisements use this constantly. A product labeled 90% fat-free sounds healthier than one that says it contains 10% fat. The words chosen shape how the information lands, often more than the information itself. Optimism bias. Most people believe bad things are more likely to happen to others than to themselves. Someone starts a new business knowing that most new businesses fail, but genuinely believes theirs will be different. A smoker knows the health risks but feels personally less vulnerable than other smokers. This bias can push people to take action and stay hopeful. The problem is it also leads to poor preparation, because the bad outcome always feels like something that happens to someone else. The curse of knowledge. Once you've learned something, it's very difficult to imagine not knowing it. An experienced programmer explaining code to a beginner tends to skip steps that feel obvious, not realizing those steps aren't obvious at all. A teacher who mastered a subject years ago may struggle to understand why students are confused. The knowledge becomes so natural that the original struggle to learn it just disappears from memory, and that gap makes communication harder than it needs to be. Negativity bias. Bad experiences hit harder than good ones, even when they're the same size. Getting one insult at the end of a day filled with compliments tends to be what you remember at night. Losing 500 taka feels worse than gaining 500 taka feels good. This is deeply wired into human psychology, likely because our ancestors needed to take threats more seriously than rewards. Today it means bad news travels faster, criticism stings longer, and people often need several positive experiences to balance out one negative one. Recency bias. Whatever happened most recently feels most important, even when it isn't. A student who did poorly on last week's test starts believing they're bad at the subject, forgetting years of doing well. An investor panics and sells everything after one bad month in the market, ignoring years of steady growth. The latest experience sits at the front of the mind and gets treated like it represents the whole picture, when often it's just a small and temporary part of it. The spotlight effect. People feel like everyone around them is watching and judging every little thing they do. You stumble while walking into a room and feel certain that everyone noticed and is still thinking about it. In reality, most people are too focused on their own thoughts and worries to pay much attention. This bias makes people hold back, avoid speaking up, or feel embarrassed about things that others genuinely didn't notice or have already forgotten. Blind spot bias. People are generally quite good at spotting biases in others, and quite poor at spotting them in themselves. Knowing that biases exist doesn't make you immune to them. Someone who has read every bias on this list can still walk into a meeting and fall straight into confirmation bias without noticing. The belief that you're thinking clearly is often the very thing that stops you from questioning whether you actually are.